Happy Monday, race fans. I'm John, and this is In the Marbles. And we got kind of a big, I don't know, should we call this a show or a video? What do we want to call this? But we got a big one today because we are going to try to recap the entire race weekend, starting with trucks, ARCA, O'Reilly, and then finishing with the Daytona 500. Um, Speedweeks don't just give us races, it gives us a master class in what the entire season is going to shape up to be. It gives us those first pieces that help us understand what's going on: loose trucks, draft discipline, manufacturer strategy, and then, just pure chaos that happens in the Daytona 500. But there was so much, I gotta say, that I thoroughly enjoyed. I think every single race I watched during Speed Week, everything had, some ups and some downs and some positives and some negatives, but we'll get into it. But overall, how much fun did you have watching racing this weekend? I mean, Trucks on Friday was absolutely epic. If you watched the ARCA race Saturday morning, it was actually a really fun race. Showed a lot of learning by these, younger drivers. And then the O'Reilly series was a lot of fun too. And then we get to the Daytona 500 yesterday. And what can I say? I think that was both an epic race and had points where it was a little frustrating, but overall, I'm gonna grade it pretty high. I'm working on my own grading system. We'll get into that, but what can I say? I think it's time. So I got so much stacked up here on my desk. I'm gonna switch to this, and then I gotta switch to this. All right. So hopefully we don't get any copyright strikes. I'm going to try to play this in the background as sort of a, point of reference. I'm going to, run through things, but I got a lot of notes here. I was working, basically taking notes inside ChatGPT so it can pull together show notes for me at the end. And hopefully this works out. We got a lot of detail. So let's get into it. So the truck race was star-studded. It was pretty epic. Tony Stewart, Michael McDowell, Carson Hocevar, Cletus McFarland, Travis Pastrana, Zane Smith, Nemechek, you name it. It was a ton of Cup drivers, plus Travis Pastrana and Cletus, and all the regulars in the Truck Series. And wow, it was just a phenomenal race overall. And we'll get into it. But I'm going to pause that there. And all right, so key storyline: star power boosted attention, had a ton of people on it. Trucks showed extreme aero sensitivity. Turn 4 appeared early. And yes, turn 4 appeared early when Cletus lost control. Don't really blame him. And I think he actually did a really good job making sure that he didn't clear out the entire field. Because if he, because a couple laps later, we saw, I think it was Garcia end up getting wobbly in the middle and going right up and taking out Tony Stewart. So it was the exact same spot that Cletus got wobbly. He overcorrected. He admitted he overcorrected. But again, I think the fortunate thing here is that he didn't wreck the entire field. He was at least conscious enough to, oversteer the right way from the bottom. But the good thing I want to take away from Cletus being in the race was he qualified 12th. He'd never driven a NASCAR truck until what, the last couple weeks. So somebody getting into a truck qualifying 12th, that shows a lot of speed, but him kind of bouncing around off of turn 4, that definitely shows some inexperience, and he would admit that himself. So overall, I do think that this showed that Cletus has a lot of talent. He just needs seat time and, some experience to know, oh, that's what this feels like when this happens. And if you go back and watch it, he had a truck closing on his bumper, which I think starts to recirculate some of that air, and it lifts that back end. And if you're not familiar with it, you're going to probably overcorrect. He mentioned during the ARCA, or after the ARCA race, but he said during the ARCA race that the ARCA car was doing the same thing, but because he had just experienced that the night before. He was able to correct and not overcorrect and not put too much wheel into it, and then, not careen off track. So, again, it's just an experience thing. But I'll admit 100%, I'm a Cletus fan. I watch his content, and I've seen him first shot win a short takeoff and landing competition, first shot win a jet sprint boat competition. Saw him almost win a trophy truck race. He screwed up literally like 100 yards from the end. I think this was in LA or Long Beach. And he put a little too much gas into it so that when he landed, the wheels were spinning too fast and he rolled the truck. But literally, he would have won that race if he didn't do that one mistake at the end because he got so excited per his own video. So I want y'all to go back, go watch some of Cletus's content, not the more silly stuff because they do some of the silly stuff, but watch the real drag racing content and the competition content, and you'll see he's a legit wheelman. Watch him, put his Corvette Leroy the Savage as the first stick shift car into, I think, the 7-second range. And what can I say? He's a legit drag racer and wins actual drag racing competitions, not just YouTube content. So please don't put him as just some YouTube star. I do think he really does love the auto racing world, and he's branching more into the circle track stuff, and you're going to see him, I think, dramatically improve. It just takes seat time. So what can I say? Let's move off of Cletus for a bit and keep going. Hocevar and McDowell were going strong. And I thought, that was a really good hookup. Hocevar was pushing really well, working together. And then we saw that again in the Daytona 500 with McDowell and Hocevar working well together until the end when Hocevar, took the lead right at the white flag. So what can I say? A lot going on. I got so many notes here that I want to make sure I get in. But let's get into just the start. Before Cletus spun out and hit the wall, he was running 3 wide in the bottom lane, staying around, a little bit of instability. I kind of expected that because the trucks are much lighter in the back end, and so their aero's a bit different than an ARCA car or a Crown Vic. Of course, Crown Vics have so much weight to them. So I think it's just not for him. I think it was a lot of not knowing how it's going to feel when that air starts to lift the back end of that truck. And then we saw a lot more rear instability and looseness, a bunch of tire failures. Hocevar was in the lead, was getting I think he had McDowell right behind him too. And when his engine just shut off, and he was able to get it refired, and then started weaving back toward the front, and then right rear tire issue, right rear, or was it left rear? Think it was 2 left rear failures. And the first one was super weird. And frankly, I was thoroughly impressed with how Hocevar handled that truck in the middle, basically slowing down, trying to brake, trying to get out of traffic. Everything is going around him, and he was able to maintain control, not spin out, not wreck the whole field, and get out of the way. And then he kind of spun out toward the bottom, and then later again had that tire go down again later. So there's maybe either they're running air a little low, or maybe they bumped something and caused something to rub the tire, caused that second tire to go down. Because when he did spin out that first time, he kind of was up on the angle and the flat at the same time. You could see sparks coming off the rear of that truck. So definitely got some questions about why 2 left rears went down. It's a little weird. But overall, I thought it was just an awesome race. And I think I'm going to pay attention more to trucks this year. Trucks were always a little lower on my list. It's like, all right, if I got something else to do, I'm going to do that. But now I do think that this truck series is getting a little bit more exciting for me. So I do think I'm going to be watching more, especially as it plays into the overall weekend with more cup drivers coming down, getting some seat time in the trucks. And then, yeah, there you go. You see Cletus mowing the grass there. So what can we say in there? Yeah, you see him overcorrect right there, and then boom, and then this was a pretty hard hit. So definitely rough night for Cletus, but overall, I did think the truck race was awesome. Um, and I think that's the most excited I've been for a truck race. And it wasn't just Cletus, as I said, I'm a Cletus fan, but it was having Pastrana and Tony Stewart and all this, and just the Ram trucks. It was just, I don't know. Justin Haley, I thought, did a phenomenal job in a truck. It sucks for him to, come down from cup to trucks, but hey, it's good to have a ride, right? So, late race, cautions and tire issues increased urgency. Fuel became a factor. Overtime finish. Um, was it Zane Smith, number 38? He won. 32 lead changes. That's a record. So definitely a fun night with trucks. Um, but yeah, we saw a lot in that turn four, and my notes here: super speedway races punish instability, and aero load management and critical is critical, and that's why these younger drivers or inexperienced drivers like Cletus, just they don't have the seat time to be like, oh, that's what this feels like when the rear unloads, or I come off of into turn four and I got a truck right on my rear and it lifts up a little bit. So I do think more experience will help there, but let's keep this video going. And then overall, I just thought it was so much fun, but what else do we want to? It was just a great race. Highly recommend. This is the NASCAR Channel 2026 Fresh from Florida 250 at Daytona NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series extended highlights. Highly recommend you go watch that. But if not, just go find the whole race, and it should be on the NASCAR YouTube channel, and watch the whole race, because I did think it was overall a really good race. But turn four, in all the races this weekend, we saw a lot of instability, and it just, that's what happens when you get some inexperience out there with a bunch of really experienced drivers. So, how much fun was the trucks? There's Hocevar spinning out again. He spun out like 3 or 4 times, and I see people giving him a lot of grief for spinning out, but it just means he's driving aggressively and, trying to make stuff happen. And he kept going up through the field, getting back toward the front. Same thing with McDowell. And so overall, I was very entertained. And I I like seeing the aggression. I like seeing people trying to make stuff happen instead of, sitting three wide in a parking lot. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So another host of our spin there. I got real questions about this engine shut off. I mean, it was a little weird. I mean, I can't imagine what it feels like when you're, in the lead and all of a sudden you got no power and you're just like, what do I do? So I don't know. I'm a fan. I just love good racing. And I thought the trucks on Friday was just a fun race. Sucks that Tony Stewart got taken out. Sucks that Cletus, took himself out. But overall, I thought, they were racing aggressively. You saw a lot of lead changes. You saw a lot of just people trying to make it happen. So overall, definitely, thought trucks were worth your time on Friday, and just a great race. All right, let's jump into. I'm gonna get you some ARCA stuff now, because ARCA is the bottom level of NASCAR. It's you know the people trying to break in. You're not going to have as many. You're not going to get a bunch of Cup drivers. You're not going to get a bunch of O'Reilly Grand National Series drivers. You did have the winner of this race was Gio Ruggiero, and he is an O'Reilly driver. And I thought it was probably him trying to get more seat time at Daytona, and he raced a great race. But there were some wrecks. Isabella Robusto looks like she blew an engine, and she was running really well. And they actually Cletus qualified fifth in this race, and he was running in fifth position on the bottom in draft for a while, and they did phenomenal drafting. I thought this was a good learning experience for the people who don't have the seat time like a Cletus or like a lot of these younger drivers. And then you see, oh, yeah, I think that was Mini Tyrell right there. Um, Yeah. He's the driver who won the Ram race for the seat to get a permanent seat in the truck series. And so I think what they're doing here is trying to get him more seat time at Daytona and just get him geared up, get more seat time, do more racing, and, kind of help him in the truck series by getting him just more seat time in ARCA. Like, why not? If it's, cost effective to do a race in ARCA, then that just gets you more seat time so you do better in trucks. 100%. Let's do it. But overall, I thought the ARCA race was a lot of fun. Saw a lot of the same issues in turn four. In turn four, when you have the more inexperienced drivers, is always going to be an issue. So a lot of spinning, a lot of, uh, but, we saw a lot of just good movement. Nitro race team, I forget what their official race name is, but they were doing really well until they basically took each other out or just had all sorts of problems. So was interesting. Cleat was running fifth and consistently running fifth until the scheduled pit, and then they got the right sides done, came to do the left sides, and the jack broke. And he went from fifth place to 32nd place. And that's just rough. I mean, it just sucks to have your day ended by a mechanical failure that isn't your vehicle. It's the jack. And they had to borrow a jack from a neighboring pit and got him done. But, how horrible is that the jack broke and they couldn't get lift him up. I mean, what are you supposed to do? So can't really blame him there, but hey, part of learning is overcoming that adversity, is overcoming an issue that's not your fault, or something happened and you just have to deal with it. And so he raced back up to 20th, and then there was a restart, and he got all the way down and he finished at 11th. So overall, fun race. I don't know a lot of these younger drivers. I thought Dye did very well. Ruggiero won it. Um, Annunziata was doing well until he got taken out. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a fun race. Isabella Robusta was doing great, leading the pack for a long time too. But then, yeah, she got taken out because I think it was an engine failure. So, but overall, I thought it was a fun race. And for Saturday morning, I mean, I'm in LA, so it was a 9 a.m. race. What a great way to start the day. Um, on this weekend was start with the ARCA race at 9 a.m., get a little bit of a tune up, and then in the afternoon at, what is it, 1:30, we had the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race. I think we need to call it the O'Reilly Auto Parts Grand National Series so that we can differentiate it from Cup and people understand the level. This was a suggestion I saw on Kevin Harvick's podcast. So I do think that's a really good idea to distinguish between Cup and Grand National so that people can kind of understand what level people are, working at. But, so many people just referred to it in years past as the Xfinity series or the Busch series. And I get that. I grew up thinking it was just the Busch series. But now that, I'm thinking about it more, we always refer to it as Cup. I think we should refer to this as the Grand National Series, and then you have the Truck Series. And that seems very intuitive to me. So, what can I say? I do think overall the ARCA race was a lot of fun. Some basic inexperienced stuff. Yeah, here's the engine failure. Um, that sucked. Took out a couple more cars. Um, think that was the second engine failure. No, Isabella Robusto. That's right. Isabella Robusto had a transmission failure. This was the other girl, woman in the race, and she just blew the engine right here. Took out a couple cars, but overall, yeah, some weird engine stuff, transmission stuff, some tires going down, but overall, fun racing. Not to the level of O'Reilly's or the Cup Series, obviously, but good experience and a lot of fun, and definitely I think worth paying attention to. I don't know if I'll be covering ARCA a ton. I guess my interest in ARCA mostly is with seeing how Cletus does on kind of a developmental side of things, but it depends. If I have time to watch the ARCA race, I'll definitely comment on it. But because of when they're run, I may be doing something else. So just full transparency. Want you to know what's going on. But let us move on to the O'Reilly Grand National Series. We'll get this going here. The 2026 United Rentals 300 NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Uh, Great race. Uh, RCR, Richard Childress Racing, absolute. How do I say this? They showed so much speed. It was the Austin Hill and Jesse Love show most of the day. And, and I think Austin Hill actually said it best in his post race interview. The competition spent so much time trying to take each other out instead of him that he just sat up front and reaped the benefits. And I think that is a good lesson. There was one point where the four junior motorsports vehicles were lined up behind Austin Hill. And I think if they'd worked together better, they could have knocked him off that lead spot and taken control of the race. But because they each wanted to win, and I don't fault them for that, but there's a certain point where you're like, hey guys, we need to work together to take out the behemoth, the gorilla, King Kong, who's up front. And instead of working together to defeat a common enemy, they started to work together and then took each other out, and that only benefited Austin Hill. Austin Hill, what did I see? I saw a stat that he's won 11 super speedway races. And I think the last Daytona 500 was Jesse Love. So that's another RCR, car, and they're teammates. So it looks like RCR has the super speedways on lock right now in the O'Reilly series. Early, I got, oh, sorry. Didn't mean to move that up. Da, 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 da. Yeah, so many Chevys in the O'Reilly series. Kind of very few Fords and a handful of Toyotas, but I would say that it's a bunch of Chevys dominating that because RCR and JRM are both Chevy houses. So definitely some phenomenal race cars. But yeah, Richard Childress Racing is making some rocket ships. Austin Hill and Jesse Love showed a lot of speed, and a lot of this was just great racing overall. And at one point, I think like 19 of the top 20 cars on the track were Chevys, and then there was a single Ford sitting there at some point. So just kind of wild. You can see on the left side of the screen there, I got two Toyotas and two Fords, it looks like, and now it's a couple, two Toyotas and a Ford, but almost all Chevys there, and you'll see it bounce around. It's interesting to see which teams have so much speed and are just running up front the whole time. And it was basically the Austin Hill Jesse Love show for most of that race. Right at the beginning, right at the green flag, the front of the field got moving, the middle of the field didn't, and then the back of the field got moving too. And so there was a nice accordion effect right off the bat. And Anthony Alfredo, who had just gotten a ride, like I think people took some pity on him because he qualified for the 500. He raced his way in, but was DQ'd because of an equipment issue in the post-race inspection. It looks like the transmission tunnel tube was disconnected and one of the driver vents was disconnected, and you're not allowed to have that. So he was DQ'd. And then I think he failed to make it in his normal ride for the O'Reilly series. So Viking Racing and Anthony Alfredo were able to make a deal to get him a ride and make it so his weekend wasn't a total bust. And I thought he, raced pretty solid, but it was just one of those where you felt, oh my God, he just went through all this adversity. And then to get caught up in the accordion effect, not his fault. He was just kind of stuck in the middle, and to have left front damage right away. Just kind of sucks for him, man. Um, yeah, Day, he was looking good until he wasn't looking good. So what can I say? Da, 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 da. Yeah, Sage. Love controlled the lanes in tempo, and then Hill surged with push support, and then they kept going back and forth, and then it was Hill had just a dominant performance, and I think until somebody other than Jesse Love, because I mean Jesse Love has shown speed. He's got another RCR, so it was him or Jesse Love. I mean, sorry, Jesse Love or Austin Hill was they were going to win this race based on what I was seeing on the screen, and until JRM or one of these other teams shows as much speed as RCR, I'm not sure if someone's going to beat Austin Hill or Jesse Love at a super speedway because they're so dominant. And they said 11 of Jesse Hill's, sorry, Austin Hill's, tried to combine their names there. Austin Hill's wins were at super speedways. So kind of crazy, kind of crazy. Um, yeah, major multi-car crash with 30 to go, red flag, secondary crash, 20 to go, eliminated more people. Um, Started getting some fuel conversation, but that didn't play out. Had some, overall, I thought it was a great race. Allgaier finished P2. Um, yeah, just overall a really solid race. A little bit of chaos, a little bit of fuel saving, but overall good passing. I would give this a very I haven't graded this, but I would give it I think a very strong grade based on the performance. Some of the accidents I thought were a little silly, but that's speedway racing, right? So um but yeah, what a great weekend of racing. I mean, how much fun. We had four phenomenal races, two phenomenal duels, and the pole qualifying was cool in and of itself. So yeah, Speed Week is so cool. Yeah, and there's Smith getting turned around. Yeah, you know, I wish we could have fewer wrecks in NASCAR in general, but I understand that wrecking because of the physics involved, it's just gonna happen. Um, and so you gotta try to minimize it. But uh, that was when the guy's hood because he'd rear-ended somebody at the beginning, and you can see the tape here on the front. So his hood was a little jacked up, and then it just ripped off and flew up like that. So Luke Fenhaas, kind of a wild day for him. They played on the television, the radio. It's like, are we allowed to race without a hood? Yes, we are. I thought that was some good radio chatter there from somebody just making sure that they're kosher, right? So, all right, let's keep going. And all right, so let's get into the 500. Overall, I thought it was a very good race. I've got it scored. I thought it was a very good race. There are aspects of it that drove me a little crazy. There's some sloppiness that caused some accidents, but overall, I'm gonna. I got a I got a spreadsheet on my laptop here. I don't have it set up for OBS right now, but so my letter grade for this is going to be a B. And let me get into how. So I have 5 categories: enjoyment, race quality, strategy, tires, and passing. Tires were not an issue. They weren't good or bad in this race, so um, I left that at the baseline. And my baseline is a 7. So that's the one. I didn't add points. I didn't take away points because I thought they basically weren't an issue. Nobody was really concerned about, tire wear off, fall off. I think that's partly due to the temperature in the lead up to, because the temperature was definitely changing. It was not a super hot day. So I think the tire wear and everything was just not affected by that, like the cooler temperature. It was just sort of a perfect day in that regard. So I left that at a 7. 8, passing, I gave an 8 because overall, for most of the race, except for the what I call three wide 405 traffic. You know, they were running three wide in the fuel saving mode. It looked like, you know, rush hour traffic on the 405, or yeah, we're going fast. Sometimes we're going slow, but, you know, sometimes we're going fast, but no passing is happening. So overall, I thought during most of the race, except for that chunk of three wide and we're just, you know, churning out laps, was good. So I gave it an 8. Strategy overall, I thought there was some good strategy. So I bumped it up. You know, as I said, the standard is 7, and I gave it an 8 as well. Race quality, I gave an 8 as well. Because overall, like, except for that one spot of just boring, three wide, fuel saving, you know, I thought that was the one spot of the race where it just dragged on me. And I understand they were just churning out laps, trying to get closer to the end, you know, strategy and fuel saving. So I'll give it an, you know, race quality overall an 8. So right now I got passing 8, tire 7, strategy 8, race quality 8. And here's where my subjective, and I wanted to have a subjective one in there because it's, I think having a little bit of subjectivity in these scores is necessary. Um, Enjoyment. Did you enjoy the race? Yes. Yes, I did. I thought it was a lot of fun. Um, Very enjoyable. Somewhat frustrating, but that's racing. Racing can be frustrating, especially when there's, you know, a bunch of wrecks happening. We'll get into BJ McLeod in a second because I do think his was an equipment failure. Nothing he did. So, but overall, I gave it the raw score of 40, so double that to 80. So I give it a B. The reason I gave it a 9 was because I thought for 2/3 of the race before the chunk where we got just three wide on the 405, we had a lot of passing, we got a lot of lead changes, we had a lot of, you know, manufacturers working together, and then we got the Toyotas out front. And I understand what they did. They, you know, throttled back, they made it so nobody could pass, and everybody just stuck in position and, you know, kind of waited it out and just kept going lap after lap after lap. And I get it. I get it. I know what they're doing. It is a strategy to make it so that your last, you know, fuel stop is shorter to try to game that system. 100%. But what I feel should have happened is that, you know, you had Busher in the middle lane behind you know, Wallace for much of that time. And what I wish they would have done is I wish the Fords that were stacked up like 3 or 4 deep behind Busher would go, you know what? Let's push Wallace. Let's get there and just push that lane out and force them to either tuck down in front of Corey Heim or up in front of Bell. And so that was one of the things that I just thought one of those teams, like the like a row of Fords, a row of Chevys, or, you know, some team should have just been like, you know what, we're gonna push our way through and force them to stop blocking. So I kind of wish that the Fords right up in the middle, because it was like 3 or 4 of them, would have just kind of pushed. I think it was Wallace running middle lane, pushed him far enough forward that he had to duck down in front of Heim, or Heim and Bell had to speed up to catch up to, you know, what that middle lane was doing, pushing the field forward faster. I think this is just, maybe that's just me, but I feel like that's what, without rule changes or anything, that's what could have fixed that kind of boring stretch toward the, you know, 2/3 to 3/4 mark of the race. Um, but overall, I really enjoyed the race, enjoyed the end. I didn't like the wreck fest at the end, but that's kind of what happens when you're all vying for position and you know, have a bad push or something. So I am not super upset about that. We'll get into a few of the accidents because I do want to talk about a few of them. But overall, that's kind of my impression. Let me get back to my notes here. Um, Impressed by Kyle Busch. Got the pole, led a significant number of laps in the front. Got, you know, basically stayed up front, was in contention a very long time until he got caught up in a wreck later, and just his aero was toast. You could tell his front end was toast. He said his handling was bad. So I feel bad for him, but I think it showed. He and Austin Dillon, they had a lot of speed I think overall they had a lot of speed and they showed it, and it was good for RCR to be up there front running, not running 20th, 30th, 40th, whatever. He was legitimately in the pack lead for a long time, so it's good to see that from Bush. But just unfortunate that he got impacted by one of the wrecks, and you could see his hood was kind of folded in the middle, and he had bad aero. And then he was commenting about his handling and having issues handling post accident, because I think early on he looked really good. So, um, yeah. SVG. I want to talk about SVG. I thought SVG showed a lot of improvement on the ovals. He was running toward the front for a while, was definitely in contention. So overall, impressed with SVG's improvement on ovals. I think he's going to be super competitive on ovals as we go forward, because it's just a learning curve for him. He had to, basically come from road courses and learn an entirely different skill set, short tracks, intermediate tracks, and super speedways. And they're all different, and they all have different strategies. And it's a very different type of racing than what he was so used to. So I'm really excited for what SVG does in. I just want to make sure that. Okay, yeah, we got 1.5 times. I just want to make sure that's sped up so I don't get a copyright issue or something. So, da, 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 da. Allgaier late move, major crash. Okay, so this I want to talk about. Let's see if we can. Can I find it? Is that here? Uh, I'm not sure if I'm gonna find it. Maybe I'll do a breakdown of that specific accident later with all the visuals. But basically, Allgaier was in the lead. Hamlin was making a push. He got bumped and had a lot of speed. He was trying to basically come between Allgaier and the wall, but there was probably, and the booth even said it, there was probably a half lane there. But when he started the move, there was probably a full lane there, and Allgaier moved too late. And basically, if he'd moved 3 feet earlier, then there would not have been a wreck. But he moved just enough late that he basically wrecked himself. He pinched Hamlin against the front, Hamlin's nose against the wall, which then, because his front end had momentum, he then forced his own front end into the wall and wrecked the field. So Allgaier misjudged that, or his spotter misjudged that, because yeah, if he'd moved 3 to 5 feet earlier, and I'm talking like when Denny Hamlin hadn't passed the rear of his bumper, then he would have just gotten rear-ended and pushed, and it wouldn't have, wrecked the field. So, you know, I think it was a slight misjudgment by Allgaier, and but he came out of the infield care center and took 100% like 100% responsibility for it. So good on him. I like Justin Allgaier. I think he's a great racer. He did phenomenal in the O'Reilly series. He got P2. I thought he was doing really well in the Cup, in the 500. But yeah, he basically wrecked himself. That was just a misjudging how fast Denny Hamlin was coming up and how much space he had before they were overlapping. So, you know, small errors can create big accidents. So, um, but what else to talk about? There's so much, and I'm already at 40 minutes on this. But what can I say? I really enjoyed seeing like Michael McDowell making the fuel gamble and going, you know what? I've saved enough fuel during the, fuel saving time that I have enough to make it to the end. Y'all are gonna pit and you're gonna come back behind me. And I thought that was like, I like seeing people make that gamble. And I like to see Hocevar come up and be such a phenomenal pusher for McDowell. He was pushing, he was blocking, he would drop down and block and then come back up and get right back into push. Very well done. I don't think, Michael McDowell can be mad at his teammate for that. And then when it came time for Carson Hocevar to go for the lead, he took it, took Um, he took the white flag with one to go, and then Ricky Stenhouse was right behind Eric Jones. He pushed Eric Jones, and Eric, like if Hocevar had been maybe a foot or 18 inches to the right, just a little bit more to the right, closer to the wall, Jones would not have hit him off center. And hitting him off center was what caused him to basically do what Allgaier did, which was nose into the wall and then come back down across the field. And then Eric Jones took out both McDowell and Hocevar. And here we're seeing on the screen a wreck um, further back in the field. But we just saw Hocevar come up behind McDowell there. And I thought Hocevar and McDowell were a great team, both in the truck race and in the 500. And it just, again, if Eric Jones had hit him square instead of off center, Hocevar would have gotten a nice big push instead of wrecked. And that would have been an amazing first win for Hocevar. I'm pulling for Hocevar. I know a lot of people, he rubs the wrong way because, he's aggressive and he's willing to wreck. But you know what? I like the aggression. I like the willingness to take the chance. Yeah, some of it's stupid. I'll give you that. He's made some bonehead moves. But overall, I think he's maturing. And as you can see right now, his pushing of McDowell was on, right on. And then him also doing effective blocking. And they were both doing effective blocking. There was McDowell dropping down, and then boom, Hocevar right back into the push. And then is that Elliott? Who is that? Who's in third there? Is that Jones? Yeah, so he comes down, blocks Jones, and then comes right back up and gets back into the push on McDowell, and that helps both McDowell and Hocevar, with the arrow. And I just thought that was very very well done. And yeah, it just sucks that the push came a little off center. Not that one, but that bump is what pushed him past McDowell because he just got enough speed off of it to, he wasn't able to tuck in behind McDowell there. I think that was a smart move not to try to force the push on McDowell and drop down, but just to take the push and take the speed. And then there it is. That's how he just got taken out. Byron up near the front there too. Byron had backup car, multiple wrecks on the day or involved in multiple wrecks. And I don't know if we should have had a caution there when Hocevar and McDowell were taken out by Jones. I understand why they didn't call it because they would not have been racing when they came back around to turn one. They would have already finished the race. So there was no impact on the finish of the race by not calling a caution there because the lead of the field was not going to come back around racing to turn one. They would have been in cool down. So I get it. You probably could have justified calling a caution there. I think the fans would have been mad either way. So, you know, but hey, Reddick, he survived. He made a good move on Chase Elliott, had a teammate there to help split. And then Riley Herbst just wrecked the field across, and then you had a mass of cars in every direction crossing the finish line. And yeah, congrats to Tyler Reddick. He survived, made a nice move at the end, showed that the Toyotas had a lot of speed because he came on super fast right there at the end. So that was one of the things that we didn't know from the duels. The Toyotas kind of hid their speed, I think, a little bit, except for Chase Briscoe. But in that last lap there, you saw a lot of speed out of that Toyota from Reddick in 2311 Racing. Um, Really, he just it was a rocket ship, and I don't think there was anything Chase Elliott could have done because either way, he was stuck in the middle, and he either had to go down the track to block Reddick, leaving it open for Riley Herbst, but Riley Herbst didn't know that Keselowski was there, and Keselowski, was right there, and so Herbst did exactly what Allgaier did. He basically wrecked himself into the wall, but by doing that, he took out everybody. And yeah, so yeah, it became a little bit of a wreck fest at the end, but overall, I thought, yeah, Tyler Reddick survived. It sucks for Hocevar, sucks for McDowell, sucks for Bush. But hey, congratulations to Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick for uh, a nice victory. Now, want to talk about the fuel saving a little bit because I do think that there is an easy fix that changes up the strategy of fuel, and you don't have to do anything. You know, you're not like, hey, let's remove the restrictor plate. I would love that. Like, let's get rid of the restrictor plate. Let's go all out again. But I think what you do actually, and this is the way you fix the issue, is you stop having the automatic caution at the end of stages. It makes it so you have to plan your fuel and tire stops differently than you would when you have scheduled stops at the end of the first two stages. So I think you get rid of it. I think it's the only way to make fuel management part of the game again. And yeah, you may still get the parking lot on the 405, but it's going to be a little different because you're going to have. Now, let's go back to the Sonoma race last year. We had SVG basically flip the stage and then still win it. And so you're going to start getting, I think, if you stop having the end of stage cautions, you'll have people gaming when they stop more. Do we stop before the end of the stage so that everybody, we go to the back of the line, but that everybody in front of us has to fuel and pit after the stage and we roll to the front? There's going to be a lot of different strategy there. So I think that's the easy fix. See how basically, maybe they need to do an A/B test. Now, maybe at Talladega or another of these super speedway races, they go, you know what? We're going to take out the end of stage cautions and see how that plays out. I watched Kenny Wallace's Coffee with Kenny this morning, and he mentioned that Denny Hamlin said that don't do anything this year. Rules are set for the year. Okay, that's fair. But next year, he said, let's move the Clash back to Daytona, and then we can do some testing on whether, what to do, how to fix that. And I do think that getting rid of the end of stage cautions is the way to make fuel management more of a individual team strategy, that instead of, we know the whole field is pitting here and here. So again, it's all part of the strategy, and I don't mind some fuel saving. What I don't like is that when you're fuel saving and you're three wide and nobody's passing, it's the lack of movement for 20 or 30 laps where you're like, this is just everybody rolling around and not changing position or not trying to better their position. The issue for me is not fuel saving, it's nobody moving, nobody being aggressive during that time period. As I said earlier, I would have liked to have seen Chris Buescher take a couple of the Fords from behind him and say, hey guys, we're going to push Wallace to the point where either Corey Heim and Christopher Bell need to catch up on speed, or we can push Wallace out far enough and then we can take a whole row to the bottom or a whole row to the top and get out in front. And then everybody starts jockeying for position again. So I think we have two solutions. One is a little bit more of a structural solution, which is, hey, we're getting rid of the end of stage cautions. And that way you got to go green flag stops the whole time. Or you get somebody like, what I'm saying is where the Fords just go, all right, hey, dial up the Penske's, dial up all the RFK Fords. We're going to go and we're going to force the issue. And I think that's the racing side of it. And I would like to see more of that where the racers go, you know what, this is boring. I understand why we're doing it, but we can take this time that everybody else is fuel saving to try to push them and force them to move position, drop a row, do something different. It's the complacency of the entire field for a little while to go, you know what? Let's just all sit tight and just rock this whole like fuel saving situation. So I guess that's my issue with it, is not necessarily the fuel saving itself or even running at lower throttle, hey, maybe that's a good strategy. My problem is the complacency where everybody went, okay, we'll just ride here for a while. No, your job is to try to get to the front or try to improve your position. And just riding around and letting the three Toyotas in front dictate, don't let them dictate. As I said, the Fords should have pushed Wallace out far enough that either the two other lanes had to pick up speed or they could drop into one of those lanes and basically force the issue. So I don't know. What do you think? Please comment below, like and subscribe. Tell me what you think about the race. Tell me if you think my analysis is on target. But I want to have this be a conversation where we all learn more and have more fun watching all these races. So it's off to Atlanta. Talk to you soon.